today, bear with me, I'm going to share my screen here. We are going to talk about buyer presentations, so your buyer consult. And in total full transparency, I have to say, and I have to admit, I was really never a big fan of these. I did not start doing buyer consults until more recently, and I am obsessed with them. It is probably one of the most, the best ways that I convert buyers right now. So any buyer leads that I have, this is really how I convert them to clients. So I do them really all the time, and I'll kind of go through exactly what I do to get those appointments from just a phone call to schedule the buyer consult to then convert that buyer consult into an actual client. So here we go. What we're going to talk about today: what is a buyer consult? What are the goals? How to get the appointment? I'm going to go through my buyer consultation, show you guys what I do, and then we're going to take a quick conversation about a buyer agency contract and what that looks like. It might be called different things in different areas, but here in Pennsylvania, we call it a buyer agency contract. So to get started, the purpose of this buyer consult or any buyer consultation that you're going to do is going to be, we want to make sure people know they're free. There's no obligation in doing it. They're not tying themselves into us, but it's really going to help them understand the purchase process. It's going to help us explain what our current market situation is, which is so very important. It's going to talk a little bit about, how we can perhaps find off-market inventory for them. There's different things that we can do as we kind of go through the buyer consult and learn more about them. And it's going to help us kind of understand more completely what it is that they're looking for in their next home. Now, I like buyer consults not only for first-time home buyers, but I like them for just any buyer in general, because things in real estate change all the time. Our market conditions change all the time. So it's really, more of a get to know you more than it is like a consult for only a first-time home buyer. What has really, I guess, changed the buyer consult for me is truly the pandemic. So thank you, coronavirus, for making buyer consults easier for us. Not easier in, yes, physically they're easier. We don't have to get people in. Most people are used to doing Zoom anything right now. And it's just made it an easier process. So to say, can you just jump on a 20-minute Zoom with me is so much easier than saying, why don't you come on in for a buyer consult? And that's such a big commitment for folks. A 20-minute Zoom is not a big commitment, and that's why we're having more success with them than we ever had in the past. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty tight on time all the time. And so fitting something 20 minutes into my schedule, I can definitely do from my kitchen at 8 o'clock at night. If that's what people want to do, we can totally do that. But again, actually having to come into an office, like that feels like a big commitment for someone. And that person, we just only had one conversation with most likely. So I don't blame them for not wanting to make a big ordeal out of it. So Zoom buyer consults are absolutely the best way to go. And I say to folks, just need 20 minutes of your time, 15, 20 minutes. And obviously it takes a little longer than that, depending on the client. I mean, if you get the sense that they really don't care, but most of the time you're in dialogue, and it takes, anywhere from, I would say 35 minutes upwards. If, you've got chatty, good conversation folks on there, up to an hour. So it really depends if they've got a lot of questions. And so our goals for any buyer consult are going to make sure we understand really the buyer's motivation, what's driving them for this purchase, because it's going to help us tailor our process and our approach. It's going to help us reduce the number of showings. And that's very important. So if we're asking the right questions, we should be showing the less properties. In this market, maybe it's a little bit different, but that is obviously the goal. And we're going to kind of understand where they are in their knowledge of the buying process. So do we need to do a little bit more hand holding? Are these people who really kind of know what they're doing and just need a little bit of more, guidance than maybe another buyer who is a little bit more new to the process? And then we can advise them then based on understanding what that full situation is on, where they may be able to save costs or maybe talk about different financial options for them as well. So what I like to talk about, we actually just talked about this on our team, I think it was about a week ago, where getting the appointment. So here's the thing, I'm sure everybody gets leads in some way, shape, or form, right? When you get that lead, and our team was really struggling with, by the time that person calls and wants to see the house is sold, right? So now what do? I'm sorry, the property's under contract, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. I'll keep you posted if something else comes on the market. Like, no. So when you have somebody who's inquiring about the property, any property, and it is under contract, and chances are in this market, you're not going to be like, oh, but do you want to see 234 Main Street because 123 is under contract? We just don't have that inventory. So what we like to do is I do a couple things. I ask them if we can get on a buyer consult. If they push back, because I want to learn more about their needs, I tell them that part of the reason that I like to do buyer consult is so that I can more clearly understand exactly what their needs are, because we like to put off-market opportunities in front of our buyers. We feel that in this market, as long as I'm very clear on your timing, your needs, your motivation, what you're looking for in your home, that we can network with other agents. If you're looking for a particular neighborhood, we can farm that neighborhood. We can send out letters. There's a number of different things that we can do, but we have to have that dialogue and we have to have that buyer consult first. We can also talk to them about bringing in a lender to the meeting. So if you haven't had, if they haven't had, the opportunity to talk with a lender yet, then you can also invite the lender into the meeting. Again, Zoom makes it all so easy. And they could start having those financial discussions as well, particularly important with first-time homebuyers. And then if they just push back, and there's no way that they're going to do a buyer consult with you, we kind of do what we call a walk and talk consult. So what we'll do is, at that first meeting, we are going to bring our buyer consultation packet, and we are going to kind of, as we walk through the house or take some time before or after that actual meeting, and we're going to go through the buyer consultation in a shorter version, but we're also going to kind of walk and talk as we do it so that we're making the most of our time together. So those are the different ways that we kind of get appointments and we kind of secure the buyer consult regardless of the situation.
And another way that I find that works too, Shara, just to chip in, is if you are with them and you see a house and that's clearly not the house that they're going to go with, offer to take them out to coffee after, like, why don't we grab a cup of coffee and talk for 15 minutes about what would work for you, so I can get a little bit more in-depth detail. While you're with them, don't let them go, especially if it's on a weekend and you have like a couple of minutes. It definitely helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting in front of them, that's why we do the walk and talk, because getting in front of them is really in some way, shape, or form. So it can also be Zoom. Like, even when we talk about, like, on our team, qualifying leads with METs and not METs, for our team, the buyer consult via Zoom counts as a MET, because it's a lot easier once you're face-to-face, and there's so much more interaction than if you're just on the phone, right? There's like a higher level of commitment there. So just getting in front of them is the key. So converting that lead through a buyer consultation is a huge opportunity. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to go through, bear with me here, I'm going to switch out my screen, go through our buyer consult and show you guys kind of what we do. If we're not, there's so many different ways to do a buyer consultation. So everybody can do it, kind of their own way, but this is what we do, and it works for us. And this is a lot of times just kind of points to start a conversation. But when we're on a Zoom buyer consult, this is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to bring this guide up on my screen. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller so that we can see most of it. You know what I really should do? And I never thought about this until right now, and as many times as I've done this, we should really make a version of this that is landscape, not just portrait, for these presentations. So what I'll also do, guys, is I will send this out just as a PDF, or sometimes as an issue if you're familiar with like the flipping books. I'll send this out ahead of time. So if I'm planning on meeting with a buyer, I'm going to send this out, or maybe I haven't heard back from someone. This is a big one. If I haven't heard back from, like, I've been reaching out to a lead, I'll send this out and then I'll ask them if we can just follow up and do a quick call on this. But I'll actually send out this consultation, this paperwork, because it's a lot of good information. So we talk about, introducing ourselves, right? So, here's my background, and, folks, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm going to send you this so you have everything in front of you. If you don't have it in front of you right now, you can learn a little bit about me. As I love to learn about you throughout this process, this is kind of what I'm all about. I always want you to know you can reach me anytime. My contact information is always there for you. So just please know that those are the best ways to reach out to me. And if you have any questions about any of my background, I'm happy to share that with you. What I also, in some cases, will do is insert a page in here with some success stories. So it can be kind of it can be one of the last pages, but let's say I'm meeting, if I'm meeting a first-time home buyer, right? I may want to share some of my solds that first time, that was more in that price point, like that first-time home buyer, so that I've helped all these buyers, right? Or if I'm working with more of a luxury buyer, then I want them to know these are the homes that I helped my luxury buyers secure over the past year, whatever it may be, just to kind of, give them a comfort level that you are familiar with working with that type of buyer. So with the buyer guides, we have these available for all of our Blink members that you can customize and you can alter as you would like. So at any time, you just copy that page there and kind of insert your, solds, your buyer sales. You can even do your listings so that they know that you are the professional and you have a track, you have a track record of results. Okay. So then we talk about, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is what we're going to go over today in our home buyer guide. Please feel free to stop me at any time you ask me any questions, and I'm going to ask you questions throughout the process as well. So we're going to go through your finances and your pre-approval. Then we're going to go into a home search. We're going to talk about the offer and the negotiations so that you know what to expect moving forward once you do identify that perfect house. We're going to talk a little bit about inspections and financing and what that looks like. And then we're going to tell you kind of what closing is and what all that entails. So as we get started here, the first thing, like I said, we're going to talk about really are the costs. What does your home actually cost to buy? Because here's the thing. Most people save up for a down payment, right? And maybe that down payment is, 5%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 20%. But so often what people experienced or not experienced, what they don't realize is the other costs that go into purchasing a home, specifically the closing costs. Because closing costs truly, when you include everything, including the lender escrows for your taxes, you really should use a number of about 4 to 5%. So if you're thinking, you know what, I saved up my money, I've got 10% down, I'm super excited to buy a house, the reality is you're really going to need closer to that 14 or 15% when you look at all the costs. Because in addition to your down payment and your closing costs, you're going to have some other little fees in there as well. So you're going to have, if you do inspections, you're going to have inspection costs. And a little bit further down here below, I put some approximate costs so that you have an idea. Obviously, these are approximate, but a lot of times, especially some of those like the septic, if you have a septic inspection that you need done, that's a big chunk, and it can kind of throw people off a little bit. So those are the inspection approximate costs. And when we get to that point, I'm always happy to recommend our most trusted and preferred inspectors. We also talk about appraisal. So appraisal is going to be something that you have to pay for upfront. So when we talk about those out-of-pocket costs, it's going to be anywhere from like $475 to $575, and that is going to be due upfront from your lender, and you're going to pay them directly. We talk about too the down payment and your deposit monies. Now those, both your deposit monies and your down payment go towards the purchase price. The deposit in our area here, I typically rate my contracts around 3%, but sometimes I go to 5%, sometimes I go to 10%, depending on how strong of an offer I really want to write. And then your down payment, again, this is something that we can obviously discuss, but with the way mortgage rates are right now, it may be better to mortgage more than you really originally planned. So that's definitely something that we can explore with a lender, where we kind of play with those numbers and see, where do you want to be from a monthly payment standpoint? Where do you want to be out of pocket costs? And, we can also factor in if we're looking at maybe a home that might need a new kitchen, or that you may be working at kind of improving, can we factor that into some of our costs? And maybe instead of putting 10% down, maybe you put 5% down and you save some of that cash. So those are the things that we go over. Now, when we talk about closing costs, this big number, everyone, like I said, it really takes everybody off guard. So closing costs, those are going to be consisting of lender fees, like a mortgage origination. It's going to be your prepaids on your taxes that the lender is going to escrow. It's going to be your title insurance. It could sometimes include your homeowner's insurance. It's going to be seller reimbursements. And these things do tend to add up. So while they're not always, each one is not individually a huge cost, they do add up. And that's how we get to that 4 to 5%. So do you have any questions at this time? So usually I'll stop in between every page, kind of check in, and most of the time they're interrupting and asking questions as well. So it's not like I'm just doing this whole big presentation and I'm not like stopping in between. But that's kind of typically how I go through that first page. We talk a little bit about mortgages, different types of loans. I also talk here too, if we have a buyer and a seller, someone who's selling and going to buy, we talk about how are we going to do that financially. We talk about, being really qualified on paper to afford both homes and what that looks like, and what it looks like if you purchase one home and then you get the proceeds from your house and you can do a recast on your loan. So there's different things that we'll talk about during this time as well, depending on that particular buyer or seller situation. Okay. We also talk a little bit about how credit can impact your interest rate, because a lot of people don't know. They see interest rates 3%, 2.875, whatever it is, and then they get a quote for 3.125, and they're like, why is my quote so high, right? So we talk about how credit score can impact the interest rate that you're getting or that you've been quoted. And we can also talk about, too, how much you're putting down is also going to affect that as well. So those are some of the things that we talk about. Then I stop, because we get to go to the fun part. So this is really what everybody wants to talk about is, what do I want in my new home? So literally what I do is I get out of that particular presentation, I stop, I go right into our MLS, and I literally start a search. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is exactly, I'm sharing my screen here. This is exactly what it looks like to us as agents on how we can put in different criteria to search for a home. So tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what are your must-haves in your home? Okay, so you want to start with school district. Great. Tell me what school districts. We're going to plug it in. And I'm literally going through this so that they can see exactly what I'm inputting, so that they know, there's no chance that that we're missing anything. So we're going to go through this entire thing. And chances are what's going to happen is I'm going to fill everything out. And they're going to be super picky, right? Because they know what they want and they watch HGTV. And I'm going to get down here and I'm going to have like 3 results, right? And so they get to see real time exactly what's happening. At that point, I'm going to go back and we're going to say, okay, can we open up the search at all, right? Would you be flexible on, expanding your search criteria to a different location? Can we, maybe go from 20 minutes to your work to 30 minutes to your work? Can we maybe narrow down the lot size? Can we increase or decrease the price point? And so we're going to go through all those things and we're going to see how that shakes out in terms of the results. So we're going to play around with that. Sometimes I may set up 2 searches for them if, they, want a couple different options. So like maybe at one price point, they have to have a finished basement, but they may at another price point be willing to finish the basement, for example. So we literally go through this with them so they know everything. And then always, of course, we can always go back and change. But this is going to give us a starting point. So we also talk a little bit about, at this time, this is a great time to talk about market condition. 1, we've gotten through finances. 2, they see what is actually on the market, so they can kind of see what the market's doing a little bit. And so then we're going to talk about, okay, what does the market conditions really look like right now? And in this particular market, more so than ever, this is such an important conversation to have, and why, right? So here I'm going to go into talking about some strategies that we use. Now, obviously, they're going to have to experience the current market conditions themselves. Most buyers, at least in our particular market here, have to make multiple attempts to get under contract, and every single time their offer gets a little stronger and a little stronger and a little stronger until they are that top offer, right? So, but here is where we talk about market condition and what the expectation is. And I tell them, this is the coming soon. When you see that, this is what we need to do, right? You need to schedule immediately. And this is why, because sometimes you can't even get in to see a property because there's so many showings already scheduled. And so this is the type of thing that, we just have this back and forth at this time about market conditions and about, how we as a real estate professional can help them navigate through this. We are here to give them the strategies and the tools and the guidance that they need to get through and actually purchase in this particular market. And it's important that we have these conversations, right? Because what you want to do during this buyer consult is you want to build trust with your buyers, right? So more, when you can share that, in-depth knowledge with them, you're gaining their trust, right? And it's important to set that tone from the very beginning. So we don't want to just kind of go through and say like, what kind of house do you want? We really need to be educating them and letting them know realistically what is going to happen, in this particular market. So at that point, we'll go back and we'll continue on with our buyer consult. And there's a couple things that we always want to kind of point out. We can go through, I go through a little bit of inspections, not a whole lot. They can read this part by themselves. We talk about offer negotiations and, just a couple pieces of information that I'm going to need once we get to that point. A lot of times I'm going to send them over an agreement of sale and accompanying paperwork so that they can kind of, when the time comes, guys, you got to make a quick decision. I'd rather it not be the first time that you're looking at an agreement of sale. So if you can look at this ahead of time, that would be really helpful. And then you can ask any questions so that we know when it's time, we can just go through that contract and get your offer in. So I've talked a little bit about all of this already kind of in the front. So sometimes I skip over parts of these because I've addressed it at the front, but I tell them, you can, for a little bit more information, if you have any more questions about the financing period, you can dig deeper in a little bit here. And we talk about, what does it mean? Like, when do you actually get your house? Because believe it or not, people sometimes do not know. So we talk about what does it mean to have a clear to close? What does it mean to have closing or settlement? Those words can be used in at least in my market, interchangeably, right? So it all means the same thing. And actually, when you get those keys at your settlement, that is when the house is yours. So we go through just some of that stuff because believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize that. Then we go through some things to kind of, just some like FYIs with folks. Our biggest one is letting folks know, no matter where you see a house, if you're driving by a house, if you see it online, if your best friend tells you that, their neighbor's moving, whatever it is, call me. I can always show you the house. So most buyers don't realize how we work, right? So we have to kind of explain to them that we get paid by the seller. If there's a broker fee, there's a, slight cost about whatever it is, however you guys work. But at any time, I'm always here as your resource to show you the house. So what can happen, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if somebody else shows you the house, they could be the person to represent you. And I know that, we hopefully at the end of this, you'd make a decision that you'd like to work with me. And at that time, we want to make that commitment so that I'm actively working for you every single day, looking for that home of your dreams. So that's why you always need to call me whenever you have a home that you would like to see. We also talk about new construction too. Excuse me, with new construction, a lot of times, you guys know how it is. People just walk into new construction, not understanding that, it is very beneficial to have a realtor represent them. We do a ton of new construction. And I will say the trend is more to having an agent than not having an agent when it comes to new construction. That's what we're seeing in our market right now. And we talk about why they will need an agent, or they should have an agent, from comp perspective, from selections, making smart structural options, having an inspection, maybe having a pre-drywall inspection and then having a final inspection. And we go through all of this with them. But it's important that if you do visit a new construction site that you let me know ahead of time so that I can call and I can register you and let them know that you are working with me. So those are the types of things that we talk about. And then we have here, what we're doing on your behalf, like, well, how we're always working behind the scenes to be able to find you that home. And then we just have some do's and don'ts of the loan process here as well. Because again, believe it or not, I'm sure you guys know, you have no idea how many times people have bought a car right before they buy a house. Or open up a credit card account to buy furniture. That's always a good one too. So that is the buyer process. That is our whole buyer consult. This is what we do with any of those conversations that we have. And, again, we offer it up to, do we have any more questions? Is there anything else that, that you may need to know or want to know about working with me in particular? And so again, most of it is a dialogue. So with that, we will go back. I want to bring back up our presentation here and kind of show you how we gain the commitment. Because again, unless this is somebody that you already know, if this is just, if this is a lead that you've gotten and you don't have that rapport and longstanding relationship with them, at this time, they may not be comfortable with a buyer agency contract, but we should explain to them how a buyer agency works. I mean, because really, they need to kind of understand, and most people are, when they understand. I've had great conversations with folks who are very respectful of my time if they're looking maybe in multiple states that I'm not licensed in, but they are very respectful of, I understand that you're out there working and you don't get paid until we buy a house. So what I tell them is that, again, at the end of this conversation, after we go through this buyer consult, I really hope that you're going to choose to work with me. I choose to work with you. And this is going to be a great relationship. And I'm really excited to get started. The way that we work is we work through buyer agency contracts. And again, this is Pennsylvania. And I explain a little bit about the buyer agency contract and what that means to them. And I also want them to know that at any time, if they do not want to work with me, then they can absolutely get out of this contract. So we never want to have someone in a contract who doesn't want to work with us. However, we find that really actually never happens, and most people are very thrilled with our service. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm going to send this over to you. So please take a look at it. If you have any questions, let me know. I do hope that you'll sign it and we can work together. But again, if you need any further clarification, don't hesitate to reach out anytime. And that's how I leave it. I am not a high pressure salesperson. I don't think that that's not how I would want to be treated on the opposite side. I feel that I've given them enough information to make an educated decision about working with me, and that the right person, if this is a right fit, because I want it to be a right fit on my side too, that they will go ahead and they will sign that contract and we're going to get started. So does anybody have any questions about the buyer consult? Or does anybody even do anything different that, maybe that they have found that has worked really well for them? No? Okay. All right, guys. Well, I know I talk pretty fast, but again, you don't want this buyer consult to be overwhelming and like a huge, hour-long presentation, as long as, unless you're having that great dialogue. But yeah, this is what we do. We customize it, like I said, as needed. And I hope that if you guys are members of Blink, that you guys use this and that you are using it. If you have any questions, let us know. Again, if in case you don't know who we are Blink Marketing. We use a multi-channel marketing strategy for all of our clients to make sure that we provide really the best marketing services. They're written by agents, by us, for agents like you. And the whole reason for our company is because we couldn't find a one-stop shop that did everything that we needed. So we went ahead and we created a company to do it. So if you guys have any questions, if you need any other information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime. We are Blink Marketing and we appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.